I grew up in a small, sleepy town named Mill Creek, far away from the bustling madness of the big cities. As a kid, I was always fascinated by how things fit together. My dad, Tom, worked as a mechanic, and he often let me help him out in the garage, sparking my interest in tinkering with gadgets and fixing whatever I could get my hands on. When I finished high school, I decided to join the military, where I worked as an electrician. It was a tough gig, but I gained skills that I knew would be useful down the line. The military life gave me structure, but eventually, I found myself wanting something different. I used to dream about running my own electronics repair shop, but that dream had to be put on the back burner. When I got out of the Army, things weren't exactly easy. I returned home to Mill Creek and took a job as a sanitation worker. It wasn't a glamorous job, definitely not the type you'd brag about, but it paid the rent. By the time I was 38, I thought I'd found stability. I was married to Linda, had a daughter named Emily, and for a while, I actually believed I was content. But I had no idea that everything was about to take a dramatic turn. It all began one Friday evening. I was at my usual spot at Murphy's Bar, having a beer, when my phone rang. It was Linda. Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. I rushed home, arriving at exactly 6:03. The minute I stepped through the front door, I knew this was the end of my 17-year marriage to Linda. My name is Jack Miller, I'm 38 years old, and to most people, I'm just an ordinary guy. I used to work as an electrician in the Army, and now I pick up people's trash. But I had dreams once, dreams that seemed to fade into the background. "Thanks for coming back early, Jack," Linda said. "Emily and I need to talk to you." I glanced at my daughter, Emily, who sat on the couch staring blankly at the floor. I tried to smile at her. She had always been my sunshine. "All right, what's going on?" I asked. "Jack, Emily and I are leaving," Linda said. "Leaving? Where are you going?" I asked, completely thrown off. "I'm divorcing you," she said quietly. "You'll get the papers today, but I wanted to tell you myself." I looked at both of them, my heart pounding as fear clawed at my chest. "I'm sorry, Jack," Linda added softly. I turned towards Emily. She wouldn't meet my eyes, and that hurt the most. "Who is he?" I asked, feeling the anger rise. If they were leaving, there had to be someone else. "It's Richard Madsen," she said after a moment. "He's in real estate. He can provide a better life for Emily." The mild disappointment I felt quickly shifted to pure rage. "You're leaving me for money?" I asked, my voice cold. "I may come home smelling like garbage, but I don't reek of betrayal." "Emily, you have nothing to say?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I'm your father, for crying out loud." Emily just looked away. It stung worse than anything. "Jack, there's no need for the sarcasm," Linda said. "I'm not trying to make this harder than it has to be." "Sure you are," I snapped. "So, how long have you been with him, Linda? How long have you been sneaking around?" "Emily is right here, Jack," Linda said sharply, glancing at our daughter. "Has she?" I asked Emily directly, my voice full of pain. "Has your mom been sleeping with this guy?" "Jack, please. Emily is your daughter," Linda yelled. "And yet she's choosing to stay with you while you go off with this guy," I said bitterly. The argument went on for what felt like hours. Finally, Emily ran out of the room, overwhelmed by the shouting. Linda threw up her hands. "Fine, if that's how you want to handle this," she said. She gave me one last pitying look before walking out the front door, slamming it behind her. And then there was silence. My entire life had crumbled. I walked into the living room and saw that they'd already taken most of their belongings. Barely anything was left to remind me of the life I had lived, a life where I was once a family man. Now, I was alone, devastated by Linda's betrayal and Emily's willingness to go along with it. It was more pain than I knew how to bear. I swore to myself that I would get revenge somehow, but I had no idea how or when. Linda must have planned everything perfectly. Just minutes after they left, I was served with divorce papers. I knew her lawyer had probably advised her to push me to sell the house and split what little we had. When the house finally sold, I moved into a tiny one-room apartment closer to my job, with only $13,000 left in my bank account and no bills to worry about. At least there wasn't any alimony, since Linda planned to marry Madsen as soon as the ink was dry on the divorce papers. One rough day at work, my buddy Sam turned to me and said, "Want to grab a beer after this?" "Yeah, why not?" I replied. We ended up at a local spot called the Rusty Nail. It was busier than usual for a Friday, and I realized it had been ages since I'd allowed myself to relax. Maybe it was time to start moving forward. As the night went on, I began to feel a little lighter, like maybe things could get better. Across the room, I spotted Jenny, one of the clerks from work. She looked good, really good, wearing a dark green dress that caught my attention. "Hey, Jack. Heard you're single now," Jenny said, giving me a look that made my heart beat a little faster. I smiled back at her, not bothering to hide my interest. Sam smirked knowingly. "Well, almost single. Just a couple more months," I said. "But I thought you were married?" "Nah, been divorced for over a year," she replied with a laugh. "Maybe that's why no one's been asking me out lately." "No dates for a year?" I asked, surprised. "None," she said. "Mostly just hanging out with friends. Want to buy me a drink?" I grinned. "How about we make this a proper first date then?" I said. "Okay." She smiled. "But don't think I'm rushing into anything serious." "No rush," I said. "I just don't want someone else asking you out before I get my shot." She laughed. "All right, it's a date. I'll have a gin and tonic." We spent a while talking and drinking, and when it was time to go, I asked if she minded if I made a quick stop at my place to change clothes. "I want to take you somewhere better than this joint." "Sure thing, Jack," she said with a smile. Back at my place, I handed her a beer while I cleaned up and changed into something nicer. We took her car since my truck still smelled like the day's work. It was my first real conversation with a woman in months, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't consumed by thoughts of Linda and her betrayal. I was finally ready to embrace life again. Jenny and I headed over to a place called the Red Pelican, which was known for its southern comfort food. Jenny hesitated at first, unsure about the spicy Creole dishes, but she quickly warmed up to it. "I don't eat like this every day, you know," she said with a smirk. I laughed. "Sometimes, you just need something different. I've been in such a rut since Linda left, but tonight, you've pulled me out of it. Glad I could help," she replied, smiling. "And, honestly, the food here is amazing. I love the vibe." We talked for hours, even danced a little, and shared one too many cocktails. Jenny drove me back home around midnight. She kissed me softly at my door but didn't come inside. "Maybe next time," she whispered. "Are you free tomorrow?" I asked, hoping for more time with her. She smiled at me. "Sure, Jack. And if you're going to clean out that truck of yours, how can I say no?" After that night, Jenny and I began seeing each other regularly. Most weekends felt like I was a teenager all over again, catching late-night movies and sneaking kisses in dark theaters. It felt good to feel alive. One night, while we were sharing burgers at Max's Diner, a thought struck me. I looked over at Jenny. "You know what? I think I'm done," I said suddenly. Jenny raised her eyebrows. "Done with what?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "My job," I said, the words tumbling out of my mouth faster than I expected. "I've been saving up some money. I want to finally do my own thing, electronics repair and installations. I don't need a big shop or anything, just a hotline, my tools, and I can be running by next week." Jenny gave me a thoughtful look. "How's this going to affect us?" she asked, sounding concerned. "It won't," I reassured her. "The divorce will be finalized by Friday, and after that, Linda won't have any claim on what I do. You know, I wanted this for years, but my wife never supported the idea. Funny how she left me for having a dead-end job, and now I'm free to make something of myself. I don't want to be sitting around 10 years from now wondering, what if?" "Wow, Jack. I think that's great," she said, beaming. "You've already scoped out the market, right?" "Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of need for this kind of work. People's tech breaks constantly, and they're willing to pay good money for someone reliable who can fix it," I said. I gave my 2 weeks' notice the next day. My boss, Pete, wasn't all that surprised, but on my last day, he came over to chat. "So, starting over, huh? No wife, new business. You're a free man, Jack," he said, clapping me on the back. "Yep, Pete. Just wish my family was part of it." Pete shifted awkwardly. "Listen, Jack, Your daughter's out back, waiting for you. She said she really wants to talk. Surprised, I walked out back, and there was Emily. She looked beautiful in a pale blue sundress, her long hair pulled back. Despite everything that had happened, I still felt proud. "Daddy," she called, running up and hugging me tightly. "Yeah, I guess I'm still your dad," I said softly. "You'll always be my dad," she said, and her voice had a mix of regret and determination. "I felt awful about what Mom and I did to you. I wanted to tell you that. I wanted to say something reassuring, but the old anger was still there, just beneath the surface. I miss you, Dad. Can we maybe grab a bite to eat?" she asked, hopeful. "I've got plans tonight," I said, but then paused. I pulled out my phone and called Jenny, asking if she minded pushing back our date. Emily looked at me, curious. "Who's that?" she asked. "Just a friend," I said, sidestepping the question. We ended up at Phil's diner. We ate mostly in silence until I finally spoke. "You look nice, Emily." "Dad, I'm not a stranger," she said, her voice edged with hurt. "Yeah, well, you're living with a stranger like his own kid," I said, the bitterness slipping through. "Haven't heard from you or your mom in months. How do you expect me to feel?" "I know, Dad. That's why I came here today, to let you know you're still my dad." "You're my only dad," she said, her eyes earnest. "Really?" I asked, testing her words. "Yes, really," she replied firmly. "All right," I said, leaning back, my voice filled with enthusiasm I didn't quite feel. "Then call your mom and let her know we're picking up your things tomorrow. You're coming back home with me, right?" Her face fell, just as I expected. "But, Dad, I can't just leave like that," she began. "Yeah, that's what I figured," I said, the hopeful act dropping from my voice. "So why did you even come here, Emily? You say I'm still your dad, but you're living with him. Explain that." "Daddy, that's not what I meant," she said, her voice trembling. She got up suddenly and rushed out. I watched her go, the old pain flooding back in. I knew she cared, but her choices made it clear where her priorities lay, and I blamed Linda for that. I went home, trying to shake off the feeling of rejection. Tonight was supposed to be a good night, and I refused to let the situation with Emily ruin it. I still had my date with Jenny, and I deserved at least some happiness after everything that had happened. My ex-wife had betrayed me, but Jenny wanted to be here with me, and that was something. I showed up at Jenny's place a bit earlier than planned, almost 30 minutes ahead of schedule. I hesitated, worrying she might think I was too eager. Well, maybe I was. I knocked on the door, and after a moment, it opened a crack. "You're early," Jenny said, smiling. "Give me a 10 count, then come in." I waited outside, counting to 10 as instructed, and then walked inside, hearing her footsteps as she headed to the back of her apartment. "Grab a beer from the fridge," she called. "Thanks, and sorry for showing up early. I guess I was nervous," I admitted, grabbing a bottle and twisting it open. "No worries," she replied from the back room. "I'll be ready in a few minutes. Just relax." I sat down by the window, sipping my beer and glancing out at the quiet neighborhood. It was a nice place, though I knew she probably paid too much for the rent. Still, everyone had different priorities. "Hey," she said, walking back into the room, smiling. "Hey," I said. "I didn't mean to throw you off by being early." She smiled and waved it off. "Next time, just call if you're running ahead of schedule. We can adjust." "Sounds good," I said. "I thought we could get dinner, have a couple of drinks, and maybe catch a movie. Does that work for you?" "Perfect," she replied. Dinner was fantastic, and the wine afterward was even better. We ended up heading to a retro drive-in theater called the Galaxy Point. When we pulled up to the payment booth, Jenny gave me a sly grin. "Really, Jack? The old drive-in?" she said with a twinkle in her eye. "Feels like we're teenagers sneaking off for a date." I laughed, leaning back into the custom bench seat I'd put in just for nights like this. "Exactly. I wanted to do something fun, something a little different." "We'll see about that," Jenny teased, a playful smile on her lips. We parked, and I hooked up the speaker system for the drive-in. My truck had been scrubbed spotless, and with the new bench seat, it felt like a throwback to the old days when life seemed simple. I leaned back, looking over at Jenny. She gave me that smile, a mischievous grin like she knew something I didn't. My thoughts wandered, and I couldn't help but blurt out, "Are you comfortable with me?" The words felt awkward, tumbling out before I could catch them. Instead of answering, Jenny moved closer, cupped my face, and kissed me softly. The windows began to fog up as things got more heated. "You're so beautiful, Jenny," I murmured, kissing her again, my heart pounding in my chest. As we moved closer to each other, I paused, and she opened her eyes. "Second thoughts?" she teased, a slight smirk playing on her lips. "No, just thinking about seconds," I joked, proud of my wit. She rolled her eyes but kissed me again, and this time, I pushed things a bit further until we were fully lost in each other. The next morning, I woke up to a banging on my apartment door, loud and persistent. The clock read 8:15 a.m., and I was still in last night's clothes. Groggy, I stumbled to the door, and there stood Linda. "You bastard!" she spat, fury in her eyes. "Did you really have to break her down like that?" "Who?" I asked, still trying to wake up until it clicked. "Emily." Linda forced her way in, heading straight for the small patio. I followed her, still half asleep. "You could have called first, Linda. I wasn't exactly expecting company." "We were married for 17 years, Jack," she snapped. "Yeah, and I guess I never really knew who you were," I shot back. She took a deep breath, trying to gather herself. "Emily came to see you yesterday to make things right, and you just blew her off?" "No, she came to ease her own guilt," I replied, my voice cold. "She wanted to feel better about leaving me, just like you did. When I said I was happy she still thought of me as her dad and that she could come back home, she ran off. She wanted me to be okay with everything, but I'm not. Not with her, and certainly not with you." Linda stared at me, anger mixed with something else. Sadness, maybe. "We're not done, Jack. You need to listen to me." I sighed and dropped onto the couch, bracing myself for another lecture. "Jack, I know I hurt you," she began, her voice softer now. "I didn't know how to make it easy for any of us. Please, just forgive me. Emily needs you." I stayed quiet, staring at the floor. "Are you even going to say anything?" she asked, exasperated. "No," I said flatly. "But if Emily wants to come back, that's fine. But I won't be her second option while you two play house with Richard. I want that to be clear. You're not her second option. She loves you, Jack. And Richard's not the bad guy you think he is. She loves me, but clearly not as much as she loves the comfort of being with your real estate guy. And yes, he's a jerk, just like you." "So stubborn," I said, shaking my head. "Yep, that's me," I said, my voice tinged with sarcasm. "I'm not here to soothe either of your consciences. I'm her dad, or I'm not. It seems like she's already made her choice. Now go live your life, Linda." Linda's expression hardened, and she threw up her hands. "We're not getting anywhere with this. Just leave, Linda. We're done here," I said, my voice tired. I headed to the loft of my studio apartment, ignoring her as I grabbed a protein bar from the counter. I heard the front door open and then shut behind her. She was gone again, and this time, I wasn't sure if I'd see her anytime soon. I didn't feel great about how it had all gone down, but I wasn't going to let them make me the villain. They needed to deal with the consequences of their actions, and if it made them uncomfortable, well, they'd just have to learn to live with it. I'd been living with discomfort for months. I planned on spending the rest of the day just relaxing by the small water feature I'd set up on my balcony, a little fountain I'd bought to help bring some peace. But my solitude was interrupted by another knock on my door. This time, it wasn't Linda. It was Richard Madsen. "You know who I am, right?" he said, pushing past me and heading out to my balcony. "Yeah, you're the jerk I saw at the divorce hearing. What do you want?" I said, not bothering to hide my irritation. "We fell in love, Jack. It happens. But why are you making it so hard for the girls? Are you really this selfish?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "Selfish for wanting my family back? Get out of here, Richard, before I lose my temper," I said, fists clenching at my sides. "Just hear me out," he said, holding up a hand. "Emily needs you, Jack. She likes me, but she loves you. Can't you give her some slack?" "She can move back in with me anytime," I said sharply. But I won't be her fallback option. Richard paused, then added casually, You know Sarah and I are getting married, right? I figured as much. I muttered, my jaw tight. Look, I'm not trying to replace you. I'm not going to be Emily's father. She still thinks of you that way, even if she wants to live with her mom, he said. Her mom's unfaithful and unreliable. She shouldn't be with you too. I snapped back. You're one stubborn son of a gun. You know that? Richard muttered before turning and walking away. As he left, I had a strong sense that things weren't as smooth in Richard's world as he wanted me to believe. Too bad. I was about to let it bother me. I picked up my phone and called Jenny. I needed to hear her voice. Meanwhile, back at Richard's place, he and Linda were sitting by the pool, the late morning sun casting long shadows. What did he say? Linda asked, her face anxious. You don't want to know, Richard replied, shaking his head. But he thinks you're not fit to be a mother. Do you think there's any chance we could get him and Emily talking again? Linda asked, her voice full of hope. He's not budging, Linda. He's hurt, and he's not moving past it. He hates me, and probably you too. Emily's running out of chances with him. Linda sighed, looking down. I never meant for it to end like this. Falling in love with you wasn't something I planned. Neither did I, Richard said, reaching over to hold her hand. He gave it a squeeze, but there was an uncertainty in his eyes. With the wedding in just 2 weeks and Emily set to be Linda's maid of honor, it was hard not to feel like it was just one more punch to my gut. But as much as Linda and Richard tried to justify it, I knew one thing. I was done playing the fool. They could have each other. I had my own plans, my own future to carve out, and I wasn't about to let their drama get in the way. I tried to explain it to him, but Jack just wasn't listening, Linda sighed, her voice tired. Honestly, I can't blame him. If I ever lost you, it would destroy me too. She hugged Richard, both of them teary-eyed. We'll figure something out, Linda said softly. You know what he needs? Someone new. Someone who can make him forget. Don't even start, Linda. Richard cut her off. That's not for us to fix. Jack has to come to that on his own. Richard hesitated for a moment, and then said, What if Emily stayed with him part-time? You know, shared custody? Linda frowned, uncertain. I don't know, Richard. She prefers it here. She misses Jack, but she chose to stay with me. She thought she'd visit him often, but we never expected him to be this resentful. I can ask her, but Jack would have to agree, and he's not exactly open to communication these days, she said, shaking her head. From the other side of the pool, Emily spoke up. No, Mom, it won't work for Dad. It's all or nothing with him. He hates Richard. I don't know how I could ever fix things with him. Linda looked at her daughter and nodded. You're right. I'm proud of you, Emily. I didn't handle things with your dad well. Cheating on him was the biggest mistake I ever made. He'll never forgive me, and I don't deserve it. But I hope you two can patch things up someday. He's a good man, just hurt. Meanwhile, I was busy getting my new business off the ground. I spread the word through my old military buddies, letting them know about my new venture. By the end of the first week, I had a few small gigs lined up, nothing major, but enough to start rolling. I focused on doing quality work, using good materials, and having a quick turnaround. Jenny even offered to help me by scheduling appointments, so I set up 2 separate phone lines and installed some scheduling software to keep everything organized. Business was slow at first, but it was steady. Then, I caught a lucky break. One of my old Army pals, Jerry, referred a private investigator named Tony Hale to me. Tony needed help with his surveillance equipment, and once he saw my work, he started recommending me to his clients. By the end of the first year, my income had doubled. By the end of the second, it had quadrupled. I was making 4 times what I'd earned as a trash collector, and life was getting better every day. Things were good, except for one glaring gap. I hadn't heard from my old family in over 2 years. Jenny had moved in with me, though she had initially been hesitant, worried that I hadn't dealt with the pain of Linda and Emily's betrayal. But I guess she saw that I wasn't as down as I used to be. Between work and Jenny, I was too busy to dwell on the past. Plus, living together meant Jenny no longer had to pay rent, and we made a great team. I knew that Linda and Richard had gotten married shortly after that last explosive conversation. Emily had even been the maid of honor. It stung, but I wasn't surprised. As for me and Jenny, marriage wasn't in the cards yet. Even after 2 years, I was cautious. I couldn't blame her for being wary about moving in, given my past. Jenny and I eventually rented a small office, about a mile from my old studio apartment where we still lived. It wasn't anything fancy, just practical. And that didn't stop my now 17-year-old daughter from tracking me down. At first, I didn't recognize her. She had matured a lot since that day she'd stormed out of the diner. "Hello, Dad," she said, her voice carrying a hint of sarcasm. "Emily, good to see you." "You've grown up," I said, trying for a smile. "Would have liked to be there to see it." "You could have been," she replied sharply. "No, I don't share my kids. They're either mine or they're not," I shot back. "Guess I wasn't yours then," she said, her voice edged with hurt. I ignored the jab. "So, what brings you here, Emily? I heard you found out I quit being a garbage collector." She looked around the small office, her eyes taking it all in. "This place is small," she said. "Doesn't seem like there's a lot going on." I smiled wryly. "I've got enough. I eat regularly now," I replied. "So, why are you here? Did you come just to put me down? Or has your mom not done enough of that already?" She winced, and for a second, I saw the little girl I used to know, vulnerable and sincere. "Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I hope you're doing okay," she said, her voice softening. "Thanks, I guess. How are you? You're 17 now, right?" I asked. "Yeah. And yes, Mom and Richard got me a car. It's parked out front," she said, her tone defensive. I nodded. "Right. Well, I think I made my opinion of Richard clear last time you were here. Nice car, though. Looks like you and your mom did well. Trading up." I turned back to her, my smile fading. "So, what are you really here for? Just to check in? Or to rub it in some more?" "No, it's not like that," she said, looking visibly uncomfortable. "Well, tell your mom she did a great job." "You're just like her now," I said, turning my attention to the papers on my desk. "Dad, that's uncalled for," she snapped. "By the way," I said, glancing up, "what do you call him? Richard? Or something else?" "Dad," she nearly yelled, her face flushed with anger. "Do you call him Dad?" I asked, a smirk tugging at my lips. "No, I mean," she paused, trying to compose herself. "Can you just stop calling him that?" "No," I shook my head. She sighed. "Anyway, a while back, Mom and Richard talked about me maybe splitting time between you and them. You know, shared custody." "So, you call him Richard?" I interrupted. "Yes, Richard," she confirmed, glaring at me. "They wanted you to split time between us?" I asked, leaning back, genuinely curious. "Yes. How would you have felt about that?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath. "I would have considered it, but you'd have to leave all the fancy stuff with them. No bringing it here. Would you have been okay with that?" I asked, watching her closely. "Why are you being so mean?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Because, Emily, you made your choice," I said, my tone softening just slightly. "I've been here. I've been waiting. And you stayed away. I want to make things better, but I can't pretend it didn't hurt." She looked away, her eyes welling up. "I just wanted to see you, Dad. That's all." I sighed, feeling the old anger and hurt mix with something else. Maybe regret. "All right, Emily. You're here now. So what do you want to do with it?" She looked back at me, her expression a mixture of hope and pain. "I want us to be okay again." I nodded slowly. "I want that too, kid. But it's going to take some time." We sat there in silence, the distance between us still there, but maybe just a little bit smaller than before. She said, her voice breaking, "I've never insulted you. Neither Richard nor Mom has either. But you always call him names and make up these ridiculous rules." "Yeah, but I'm not the one who wrecked his family, am I?" I shot back. "Don't come back, Emily. You're not part of my life anymore. You're just here to flaunt his money and his lifestyle in my face. Stay where you belong. Now, please leave. I have work to do if I'm ever going to make enough to compete with that guy." I turned away, pretending to focus on the paperwork in front of me. "Dad, you're cruel," she screamed as she stormed out, her words echoing off the walls. She was probably right, but I didn't care at that moment. Later that evening, Jenny and I sat down, and as usual, she was calm but curious. "So, what's your plan?" she asked, tilting her head as she looked at me. "I don't know, Jenny," I admitted, "but I'm not going to be second best. I demand to be the only one in her life. That's what it comes down to. Divorce often means kids split time between their parents, you know," Jenny pointed out, her tone gentle. "Yeah, I could have handled that," I said, sighing, "but they wanted me to be a visitor, on their terms, if I behaved myself. That wasn't going to work for me." "Maybe cutting her off completely wasn't the best move," Jenny said thoughtfully, "but I do understand why you're hurt." "I think they do too." A month later, I was sitting with Jenny in a back booth at a local bar when my best customer, Tony Hale, showed up. "Mr. Hale," I said, standing to shake his hand. "Good to see you." "Jack, how are you?" he said, giving me a firm handshake. "Mind if I join you too?" "Of course not," I replied, gesturing to the empty seat. "You're looking lovely tonight, Jenny," Tony said warmly. "Thank you, Tony," Jenny replied with a smile. "I'm glad you took my advice and expanded your business," Tony said to me. "Yeah, me too," I nodded. "It's been crazy. I had to bring in a bunch of young techs, some barely out of high school, but they're sharp. They handle everything from hardware to software, and business is booming. Your referrals really helped." "Well, you deserve it. My clients love your work," Tony said, grinning. "You know, Jack, the best revenge is success. Sooner or later, your ex will realize what a huge mistake she made." "Maybe," I said, my voice trailing off. "But it's been almost 3 years. Jenny and I are getting married, and I'm trying to leave all that behind me."
The hurt's still there, but with her around, it's less.
Jenny squeezed my hand under the table, and I gave her a small smile. We chatted for a bit longer before Tony left, and Jenny and I wrapped things up. Despite the rare visits from Emily, I always ended up feeling unsettled afterward. It seemed like my past just wouldn't leave me alone. Later that week, I had another unexpected visitor, Linda. She looked agitated as she walked into the office, her eyes searching mine. "Linda," I said, already feeling tired of the situation. "What do you want?" "Hello, Jack," she said, her tone guarded. "Emily told me she visited you. I had no idea she planned that, or I'd have made her call first." "How'd you find me, Linda?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Is this some kind of coincidence?" "I know your usual spots," she said, shrugging. "This was the first one I tried." "No Jenny today," she added, glancing around. "What do you want, Linda?" "My personal life isn't your concern," I replied. "You're right," she conceded, her voice softer. I want you and Emily to be okay again. She cries sometimes, Jack. She loves you, and she's still just a kid. She doesn't understand everything. Most adults don't either," I said dryly, though my tone softened slightly. Linda gave a sad smile. "Maybe. Can I buy you a drink?" I hesitated before nodding. "Why not?" I signaled to the bartender for 2 beers. "You know my stance, Linda," I said as we waited. "If Emily wants back in my life, she has to choose me over him. I deserve to have my daughter too, and I'm not going to agree to any half measures now. I didn't get a choice back then, so why should I compromise now?" Linda took a breath, her frustration visible. "Jack, it's not about making rules. Emily needs her father. That's the only reason I'm here. I'm not trying to talk about my relationship with Richard. Why should I believe that?" I asked, my voice tense. "Did I really hurt you that much? Why don't I believe you, Linda?" "Oh, maybe because you're a liar and a cheat." "Yes, you hurt me that much," I said, my voice rising, "especially by not letting me have a say in Emily's future. I'm really sorry for what I did to you, Jack." "I mean that," Linda said, her voice trembling. "I've lost sleep over it. Once I decided to leave, I thought it would be best to make a clean break, to hurt you less in the long run. I figured if I tried to soften it, we'd just be stuck in a cycle that would hurt us all. I guess I was wrong." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Emily was scared, Jack. Scared of what was happening and scared of me leaving you. So, I told her she had to make a choice, me or you, but that she could visit the other whenever she wanted. Neither of us expected your reaction when she picked me. Wrap your head around it? I echoed, my anger rising. Did you really think I'd just be fine with what you did to me? To her, I shook my head, feeling the fury boil over. You left me with nothing, Linda. Nothing and no one. And you expect me to just move on? Jack, I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I tried to do the right thing, to minimize the hurt. I guess I failed. I don't know what else to do anymore. I just want us to be civil, to at least talk to each other. Most of all, I want you and Emily to move past the bad blood and find some peace. She misses you, Jack. She needs you. I took a long sip of my beer, setting it down carefully before looking back at her. Here's the deal, Linda. The condition is simple. She leaves you and Richard and everything that money stands for behind. Then, I'll welcome my daughter back into my life with open arms. There's no middle ground. Not after everything you did to me, especially the cheating. Understand that. And if you can't, well, then I think we're done here. Linda opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it, her eyes misting over. She seemed to realize there was nothing left to say. I watched as she took a deep breath, stood up, and walked away, her shoulders sagging as she disappeared into the crowd. I didn't feel any better. If anything, I felt the old weight settle in, the bitterness of the past as heavy as ever. But I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't going to let go of that now. I'd like to finish my beer in peace, I said, staring down at the amber liquid. Buying it, by the way, is the nicest thing you've done for me in a long time. Linda stood up, and I could see her eyes glistening. Maybe she was tearing up, or maybe not. Okay, Jack. The door's always open if you decide to walk through it. But I guess this is the last you'll hear from me unless you do, she said, her voice almost a whisper. Then she turned and left. I gave her a half-hearted wave and turned back to my beer. I knew I needed at least a couple more. My stomach was in knots, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. True to her word, she kept her distance. 3 years went by before I saw her again. And when I did, it was a shock for both of us. You know, there are certain things you watch expecting one thing and get another, like cartoons or sitcoms. You expect to laugh, but every now and then, they hit you with something deeper. For me, it's financial news. Watching the ultra-wealthy panic as their millions vanish because of foolish speculation is kind of hilarious. This recession, it's something else. Watching those Wall Street types squirm has been strangely gratifying for people like me, who work hard and get their hands dirty to make a living. It's not often we get to see the rich and powerful face consequences. But what does any of that have to do with me? Well, I'm one of those guys who gets his hands dirty to make a living, but I've been lucky lately. Really lucky. My accountant, yeah, Jenny insisted I hire one, told me I'm worth over $7 million now. I own and run 14 small tech repair shops in the southern part of the state, including the one I started with. My staff, mostly high school and college kids who are brilliant with hardware, software, and anything in between, are all making decent wages, minimum wage plus commission. And they've earned it. Oh, and Jenny and I are married now. We're coming up on our 3rd anniversary, and while we haven't had kids yet, we're thinking about it. Tonight, we were at a restaurant called Ember's Catch. Jenny had gone to the restroom, saying she needed to tell me something when she got back. I knew it wasn't anything bad, definitely not a request for a divorce. We were happy. Busy, but happy. There you are, sweetheart, I said when she returned to the table. I thought you'd fallen in. Very funny, she replied, rolling her eyes, though I could tell she was nervous. I need your help. Help? I asked, puzzled. At home, she said, sighing. I'm working almost as much as you are, Jack. Most of it's on the computer, but I'm on there so much that I just can't keep up with the house. I need help. Cleaning, chores, that sort of thing. I raised an eyebrow. Not a live-in, I hope. No, just someone to come a couple of times a week to take care of the heavier stuff. What do you think? She asked, her eyes hopeful. Well, you always knew it was your decision. But I appreciate you giving me the illusion of a say in it, I said with a laugh. She shook her head. You do have a say, Jack. It's not just an illusion. The Grossmans use a service they swear by. They say the cleaners are trustworthy. And yes, you really do have a say because I love you, and I want us to decide this together, Yeah, right, I said, smiling. Go ahead and call Henry or Meg tomorrow to set it up, if you haven't already. Since it's not a live-in, I'm fine with it. We had a great night, talking, dancing, drinking a little too much. We went home and spent the rest of the night doing things that made me realize just how lucky I was to have Jenny. God, I love this woman. The next day, I got home late. The scene I walked into was strange. No, it wasn't sad. It was just strange. Amanda? I called out as I stepped inside. She looked like she had on our wedding day, nervous, anxious. Jack, something really unusual happened today, she said, her voice shaking a little. I need you to stay calm, okay? Did you cheat on me? I joked, knowing full well she hadn't. Jenny was way too smart for that. No, she said, but her voice was still tense. But you still need to stay calm, all right? Of course, whatever you say, I replied, still smiling. You remember last week when we talked about hiring someone to help with the housework? She began. You know, just someone a couple of days a week. Cleaning, ironing, laundry, that sort of thing. Yeah, I remember. What about it? I said, still clueless. Well, she paced a bit before stopping to look at me. Okay, just follow me to the den. I followed her, curiosity growing. And there, sitting in my den, were Linda and Emily. What the hell? I said, stunned. My eyes moved from Jenny to my ex-wife and then to my daughter, who looked entirely different from the last time I'd seen her. Emily was all grown up now, and honestly, she was stunning. These are our cleaning ladies, Jenny said, her voice calm, though I could hear the edge to it. Excuse me? I heard the words, but I couldn't process them. They've hit hard times, Jack, Jenny explained. I called the cleaning service, and Linda and Emily were the ones they sent. They had no idea this was our house. Believe me, I was just as shocked as you are when they showed up. None of us got much work done today. Hard times, huh? I said, turning to Linda. It was the stock market, Jack, Linda said quietly. We lost everything, but at least we have jobs now. It's humiliating to be here, but we're managing. They wanted to leave as soon as they realized where they were, Jenny added quickly, but I convinced them to stay until you got home. Otherwise, it would have just turned into a long, drawn-out thing, with you trying to track them down and them avoiding you. You understand what I mean, right? I took a deep breath, looking at Jenny. She was right, as always. If Linda and Emily had walked out, I would have wanted answers, and it would have turned into some kind of ugly chase. You did the right thing, Jenny, I finally said, my voice softening. Thank you, she said, her hand resting on my arm. I looked back at Linda and Emily, trying to figure out what to say. Emily wouldn't meet my eyes, her face flushed with embarrassment. Linda, on the other hand, looked straight at me, her expression resigned but defiant. It was surreal, seeing them here, like some kind of twisted joke. So, now what? I asked, my voice flat. Are you two planning to keep working here? Linda shook her head. We'll ask the agency for a reassignment, she said. This isn't. I can't ask Emily to do this, Jack. It's too much. I sighed. Well, let's figure it out tomorrow. For now, I don't know, let's just deal with it. Sit down. We'll have dinner. Linda's eyes widened, surprised, and Emily finally looked up at me, her expression a mix of shock and something else. Hope. Maybe. Jenny gave my arm a reassuring squeeze, and I nodded at her. Come on, I said, gesturing toward the dining room. Let's eat. For a moment, none of us moved. It felt like time had stopped, like we were all standing at the edge of something. Then, slowly, Emily stood, followed by Linda. They walked toward the table, and I followed behind them, Jenny at my side. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it was a start. I looked straight at Linda and couldn't resist. So, did he kick you out? Must have been tough on him, huh? Being poor, maybe actually having to work for a living. With you two along for the ride? Linda sighed, her face hardening. I think this was a mistake, she said, starting to stand. Come on, Emily. Let's go. Jenny, thanks for lunch, and for at least trying. She tugged at Emily, who had been sitting silently, sniffling behind her handkerchief. No, I'm the idiot here, I admitted, sighing. Please stay, so you can mock us some more? Linda shot back, her eyes narrowing. Daddy, Emily finally spoke, her voice cracking, though she trailed off without finishing her thought. I looked at her, really seeing her for the first time in years. She had to be almost 20 now. Emily, Linda, please. Sit back down, I said, trying to collect myself. It's all so crazy. Everything that happened before and now this. I gestured at the three of them gathered in my living room. So, what exactly happened? The market collapsed and wiped you out, just like that? Linda nodded. Pretty much. We lost everything, she said quietly. We thought about you, about what we'd done, but knowing what you thought of me. And Richard? I asked, biting my lip. Where is he now? He divorced me to protect us from the financial fallout, she said. I blinked, trying to process. Wait, what? He divorced you? Why? To protect me and Emily, she explained. It's complicated legal stuff, but he didn't want the mess to drag us down. So, he filed for divorce. But it wasn't a real breakup. It was just a strategy, not a real breakup. I repeated, confused. Jenny, who had been sitting quietly, chimed in. You know, Jack, maybe Richard isn't such a bad guy after all. Yes, he cheated. And we all know they should be accountable for that. But they fell in love. It happens. They hurt you. And now the world's hurt them. They realize how complicated it all is. She was diffusing the tension in the room, and I decided to let her take the lead. Jenny had always had a way of saving me from myself. Jack, Linda continued, Richard's in a rough spot. He lost everything. The house, the cars, his accounts. He's practically homeless, but a friend of his owns a cleaning service, Century Maid, and gave me a job. Emily helps out. We're doing it together. Linda smiled, and for a second, there was something like pride in her expression. Emily, you help your mom with all of this? I asked, finally turning my gaze to my daughter. She nodded, her eyes watering. Yes, Dad. Where are you two staying? I asked. They're renting a small apartment in the Rushfield area. Jenny interjected. Rushfield? I raised an eyebrow. Isn't that place pretty rough? Jenny nodded. It's not the best neighborhood, she admitted. It's fine, Linda said defensively. It's warm and cozy, and we're managing. Look, Jack, we're not here to ask for help. We didn't even know this was your place. It's clear you're doing well, really well, just looking around here. I'm happy for you. We're still here because Jenny made a good point. It's better if you know what's going on, rather than letting things fester. Linda paused, then looked me directly in the eyes. And once again, Jack, I'll say it. I think you should give your daughter another chance. She's missed you. She always has. Mom, Emily's voice broke. I know Dad's upset with me. We're not here to ask for anything. We work hard, and we make an honest living, Dad. We're proud of that. I looked at her skeptically. Honest living? Huh? You mean like what I did when I was a garbage collector? Yes, like then too, Emily said, her eyes dropping. I was never ashamed of what you did, Dad. I just wanted to be with Mom. I thought she needed me more. The car, the nice things, they were just extras. It wasn't what you thought it was, not really. And what about your relationship with Richard? I asked. The thought of it still hurt. She had chosen him over me. Maybe I had misunderstood, but it didn't make it any easier. Emily took a deep breath. He's a decent guy, Dad. He doesn't yell. He treated us well, treats us well. But he's not my dad, and he never will be. You're my dad, and I will never abandon you. Her words hung in the air. I felt conflicted, torn between the logic of what everyone was saying and the raw pain that still lingered inside me. What Emily, Linda, and Jenny said wasn't wrong, but the betrayal had cut deep, and it was a scar that still hadn't faded. I remembered what Tony once told me, the best revenge is success. Maybe it was time to put that into action. Linda, Emily, I began, looking them both in the eye. I'm not going to pretend everything's fine. Linda, you cheated on me. Emily, you chose Richard over your own dad. It hurt then, and it still hurts now, but it's in the past. I got lucky. I found Jenny, or maybe she found me, I don't know. But I'm happy, even if I've still got a few scars left over. That said, I do have one question. This cleaning service you're working for, is it a big company? Yes, pretty big, Linda replied, surprised by the shift in the conversation. There are a lot of women working there. The pay is okay. We get about 25% commission, but we have to cover our own insurance and everything. I glanced at Jenny, and she smiled, her eyes lighting up. She knew what I was thinking. She always did. All right, Linda, here's the deal, I said. I think I might be able to help you, if you're interested. You're managing, but let's be honest. Rushfield isn't exactly where I want my daughter living. You, Linda, were once the love of my life, and I guess I still have a place for you in my heart. God help me. I paused, taking a deep breath. Go home tonight. I need to talk to Jenny, and we'll call you tomorrow. Linda nodded, her face a mixture of hope and disbelief. She fumbled in her purse, pulling out a business card with her employer's information. We haven't made a sale yet, but we're planning to soon, she said, handing me the card. Emily stood up suddenly and walked over, giving me a hug and a quick kiss on the cheek before hurrying to catch up with her mom. I watched them leave, then turned to Jenny. Well? I asked, my heart pounding. Buy the business, she said simply, her smile widening. I know you're thinking about it, Jack. It looks like a solid investment. Yeah, Jenny said hesitantly. I paid them for the week, Jack. They're getting by, but just barely. I'm sure you noticed. I nodded. I was glad she had paid them, but the last thing I wanted was for Linda and Emily to think I was handing out charity. I couldn't help but wonder if they'd planned to come back regularly or if it was just a one-time deal. The next day, Jenny called them, set up a cleaning schedule, and even lined up a couple of high-end clients. They were grateful. When they returned that Thursday, they did an excellent job. My shirts were pressed perfectly, though I didn't bother asking whether it was Linda or Emily who'd handled it. About 4 weeks after that awkward first meeting, Jenny called me at work to let me know everything had gone through as planned. She'd arranged a dinner for the 4 of us at Sammy's, a nice spot in town. Thanks for inviting us, Jenny, Linda said as she and Emily arrived. Jenny nodded toward me. You too, Jack. It's good to see you again, Linda added, a bit softer. I nodded back. We talked about our days, how things had been going since we'd last seen each other a month ago. It was a surprisingly pleasant evening, with Emily glancing at me every now and then, though neither of us had said much directly to each other. As the dinner wrapped up, Jenny caught my eye, and I nodded. Time to move forward. Ladies, Jenny said, her voice calm but serious. Jack and I have something to ask you. Linda, clearly surprised, nodded. Sure. What can we do? We need you to run a business for us, Jenny said, straight to the point. I'll handle the finances and appointments, but we need someone on site to manage the daily operations. Linda blinked, confused. Wait, what? Run a business? Jenny smiled gently. Yes. We bought Century Maids recently. Jack and I didn't want to see either of you struggling. This way, you'll be financially secure and independent. Jack? Linda asked, turning to me, still in shock. As Jenny said, I confirmed. You and Emily will manage the business. We'll take 25% as backing, but the rest is yours. The current office manager will help you get started. There are no strings attached. So, what do you think? Linda turned to Emily. What do you think, honey? Emily's eyes lit up. Yes, Mom. And we'll still get to see Dad and Jenny, right? She asked, her excitement obvious. I smiled and nodded. Of course, kid. Thank you, Jenny. This is more than I deserve, Linda said, her voice wavering a little. The moment got emotional. There was an unspoken understanding between all of us. Linda knew she had made mistakes, and Emily was beginning to understand what really mattered. The night ended on a positive note, with everyone seemingly in a better place, except for one person. At a dimly lit bar, Robert sat slumped over the counter, his head in his hands. What'll it be? Asked Mikey, the bartender. A cup of hemlock would be nice, Robert muttered. How about a double Jack Daniels instead? Mikey offered. Sure, lay it on me, Robert said, downing half the drink in one gulp. A year ago, Robert had money, influence, and the woman he had pursued. Now, his only comfort was found at the bottom of a glass. He had lost everything. His wealth, his standing, and even the family he had taken from another man. Now, He wondered how much of it had really been about protecting Linda from financial ruin. Mikey walked over, wiping down the bar. You know, it's none of my business, Robert, but I hear Linda's doing pretty well. When's the last time you talked to her? Couple of months ago, Robert mumbled. We were seeing each other here and there, but my lawyer advised against it until I get back on my feet. Well, I hear she and her daughter are running a cleaning business now. And they're doing fine, Mikey said. I think her ex is involved, too. Robert frowned. No, they're just employees, not owners. And Jack, he doesn't want anything to do with them, not after what we did. Mikey shrugged. Maybe, but you should give Linda a call. Something's going on there. You might want to know about it. Robert snorted. Yeah, maybe I will. If she's making good money, maybe she can lend me some, he said with a hollow laugh. Mikey smirked. If she's running a business, maybe she'll hire you. Robert shook his head. She's not running it. If she was, she would have told me. Maybe, Mikey replied, leaving Robert to his thoughts. Meanwhile, Linda and Emily were cleaning for a new high-end client. Even though they were technically managing the business now, Linda believed that staying hands-on helped keep things running smoothly. She and Emily spent part of the week in the office and the rest of the time managing their team out in the field. Mom, someone's at the door, Emily called from the kitchen. Should I get it? No, I'll grab it, Linda said, setting down her cleaning supplies and heading to the door. To her surprise, standing there was Robert. Robert? How did you know we'd be here? She asked, her voice full of shock. Your office manager, Helen, told me, he replied. Can I come in? Linda hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea, with everything your lawyer said. I'm not sure either, Robert admitted, stepping inside anyway. But I had to see you. I heard you're running the business now, but it looks like you're still doing the cleaning. I am, Linda said, her tone guarded. It's good for business. And yes, I'm running the company now. Robert's expression shifted to confusion. I don't get it, Linda sighed. A few months ago, Emily and I ended up cleaning Jack's house. Jenny made us face him afterward. And then, Jack bought the business and gave it to me to run. I meant to tell you, but I didn't know how. I figured you wouldn't understand. Robert looked stunned, his face pale. Wait, Jack bought the business? He's that wealthy now? Yes, Linda confirmed. Robert leaned against the wall, shaking his head. That's ironic. A few years ago, I thought I was the one who'd come out on top. Linda didn't respond. She just stood there, watching him as he processed the news. In the end, there wasn't much more to say. The tables had turned, and Robert was finally facing the consequences of his actions, just as Linda had faced hers. I had it all back then. I took you from him, and now it's Jack who has the money. I guess this is his version of revenge, Robert said, his voice heavy. Linda shook her head. Robert, we both betrayed him, but he's not trying to get even. He's moved on. He's happy, emotionally, she said. Then, with more gentleness, she added, How are you? Really? Robert looked down. Not great. I still owe $250,000. No job, but a friend, Rigel Macker, is letting me stay with him for free, he admitted. At that moment, Emily came into the room. Robert, I didn't see you there. How are you? She said brightly. I'm good, Emily, he said, giving her a quick hug. Maybe Dad can help you out, Emily suggested innocently. Robert gave her a sad smile. Not likely, kiddo. He has every reason to hate me. Linda exchanged a look with her daughter before turning back to Robert. Listen, I'm the operations manager at the company now. I can hire you, and I'm sure Jack won't stand in the way. He's truly moved on from what happened. We might have to swallow a bit of our pride when we ask, but this isn't the time to let that get in the way. You need a steady job, Robert, Linda said. Robert shook his head with a laugh. Thanks for the offer, Linda. But me doing housework? I'd be the worst employee you've ever hired. Linda didn't laugh. No, not housework. I need a driver, someone to handle supply pickups and deliveries. It's only about 5 runs a week, and it comes with benefits. It might help calm down those collectors chasing you by allowing you to pay in installments. It's a start, Robert, he sighed, spreading his hands in surrender. All right. I guess beggars can't be choosers. Besides, It means I get to see you. I really miss you, Linda. She smiled softly. I miss you too, she said. Emily, meanwhile, seemed less interested in the emotional reunion, her mind elsewhere. The four of us sat at a table in a quiet corner of the club. Millie, the waitress, had just dropped off our drinks and moved on to the next table. Linda, what's this about? I asked. Linda had called that morning, asking to meet Ginny and me at the club, saying she had something important to discuss. Seeing Robert there, sitting beside her, didn't do much to put me at ease. Jack, we need your help, Linda said, her eyes meeting mine. I kept my gaze on her, waiting. I want to hire Robert. Well, my ex-husband. Can I? She asked. What the hell? I muttered, trying to keep my cool. Jenny stepped in, placing a calming hand on my arm. You mean for the cleaning service? She asked. Yes, Linda said, nodding. I need a driver, and Robert desperately needs a job. Robert finally spoke up, his voice quieter than usual. Jack, how are you? I hope you're well. Things have been rough for me lately, and I wouldn't be here, humbling myself like this, if I had any other choice. Linda convinced me to come and ask. If she could, if I could work for you, I'd be grateful. I know I've messed up in the past, but you've got some nerve, Robert, I said, cutting him off. Why come to me? Don't you have any old business connections who would hire you? Robert gave a hollow laugh. Believe me, Jack, I wish I did. But I've become a bit of a pariah. I even divorced Linda, the woman I love, just to keep her safe from my financial mess. That's the long and short of it. If you hire me, I promise to do a good job. Jenny stepped in before I could respond. Robert, we'll hire you. You can start Monday. Linda will give you all the details, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. I looked at Jenny, disbelief written across my face. Jack, she said firmly, you've forgiven Linda. We're letting go of the hurt and moving forward. It's time to take the next step. I nodded slowly, understanding that she was right, that she was in charge of this part of our lives. Robert looked at me but didn't dare offer a handshake. Instead, he whispered what sounded like a genuine thank you. I nodded in acknowledgement. After the meeting, the four of us shared a few drinks before parting ways. Robert and I exchanged a few words about the market and the mess it had become, and he briefly touched on his downfall. Linda, meanwhile, spent most of the evening talking to Jenny, expressing her gratitude. I had just agreed to hire the man who had stolen my wife and daughter. A big deal, for sure. But little did I know, it was nothing compared to what Jenny dropped on me 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, Jenny approached me at home with a nervous expression. Jack, you know your ex and I have become really good friends, right? She asked. I nodded, looking up from my paperwork. Yeah, I know. It's fine. I'm over her, so I don't mind. Well, we've gotten pretty close, she continued, her face looking even more anxious. I raised an eyebrow. What's going on? I asked, trying to read her expression. Jenny bit her lip before blurting out, I gave them the money. What money? I asked, still confused. She hesitated, and before she could explain, the phone rang. I picked it up, and Jenny seemed relieved for the momentary distraction. Hello? Sarah? I said into the receiver. Yeah, I'm fine. No need to thank me. I hear Robert's doing a good job. I paused, listening. No, not that. Oh, that, I said, glaring at Jenny as if she'd just slapped me. Yeah, sure, you're welcome. I finished and hung up the phone. I turned to Jenny, feeling like I didn't even recognize her. You were about to tell me? I said, my voice strained. She nodded. I was. Jack, I gave them the money. You mean $250,000? I yelled, disbelief and anger bubbling up. You gave them our money? They want to get remarried, Jack. They can't do that with all that debt hanging over their heads. We had the money. It's nothing to us now, but to them, it means a fresh start. The money isn't going directly to them. It's paying off the IRS and some of Robert's old creditors. Jack, you would have done it yourself eventually to help Linda out of her mess. I just made it easier for you, she said, her voice calm but pleading. And really, this is your revenge, Jack. You saved them. That has to feel good, doesn't it? I sank into a chair, looking at her and then looking away before finally turning back. Slowly, a smile spread across my face. "You know," I said, shaking my head, "I hate to admit it, but I think you're right." I smiled, feeling a strange sense of closure. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 5:27 p.m. somehow. After everything, it seemed like things had come full circle.